In 1979, a classified document surfaced that talked about psychological warfare against civilian populations. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars claimed to be a technical manual originally found in an IBM copier purchased at a surplus sale. Whether authentic or elaborate fiction, the document laid out a chilling blueprint for social control through economic manipulation and information warfare. The document opens with military language applied to peacetime populations. Open quote. It is patently impossible to discuss social engineering or the automation of a society without implying extensive objectives of social control and destruction of human life. That is, slavery and genocide. End quote. The authors frame the public as an enemy to be conquered through methods that bypass conscious awareness. The weapon is stress applied through economic pressure. The battlefield is daily life itself. According to the document, the Quiet War was declared by international elites at a meeting in 1954, made possible by the computing revolution that allowed for economic modeling and prediction at scales never before imagined. The computer could calculate how much economic pressure would produce specific behavioral changes in populations. Tighten credit here, increase prices there, manipulate media coverage everywhere, and you could steer entire societies without firing a shot. The manual describes the general public with contempt. The general public refuses to improve its own mentality and its faith in its fellow man. It has become a herd of proliferating barbarians and, so to speak, a blight upon the face of the earth. This dehumanization justifies the proposed control systems. If people are cattle, then managing them like cattle becomes logical, even necessary. The methodology outlined involves what the document calls economic shock testing. Just as engineers test the tolerance of materials by applying measured stress until they break, social engineers would apply economic pressure to populations and measure their breaking points. How much unemployment before riots? How much inflation before political upheaval? How much debt before complete submission? A nervous system under continuous pressure does exactly what biology instructs. It fights, it flees. Or, when neither option remains viable, it freezes. We call this freeze response dissociation. The mind fragments itself to endure what it cannot escape. Create sufficient ambient stress, remove all viable outlets for action, and populations will dissociate into compliance. Modern life has become a masterclass in supplying pressure without resolution. Economic uncertainty that never quite resolves. Global crises that cascade one into another. Media that bombards without pause. Families fractured across continents and ideologies. Each wave pushes the nervous system closer to its breaking point. The mind begins silencing parts of itself simply to continue functioning. This silence, however, bears no resemblance to wisdom. This is a silence of survival. The document talks about how to keep public undereducated in systems thinking while overwhelming them with data. Create emotional reactions through media while suppressing critical thinking. Provide endless entertainment and distraction while real power operates beyond public awareness. Most insidiously, create problems that only the controllers can solve, ensuring populations beg for the very systems that enslave them. What happens to a population locked down in survival mode? The numb do not organize, the exhausted do not resist. Those drowning in their own nervous system's defensive responses make excellent subjects. They scroll when they should speak. They comply when they should question. The silent war achieves its victory through the induction of psychological absence, and success is measured in the quietness of submission. The Bhagavad Gita offers a different understanding of how to remain whole under pressure. In chapter 2, verse 14, Krishna tells Arjuna, "The contacts of the senses with their objects give rise to happiness and distress. They are like winter and summer, Arjuna. They come and go. They are impermanent. Therefore endure them bravely. Here, Krishna is teaching that sensations and pressures are temporary waves that pass through awareness. You don't fragment yourself to escape them. You develop the capacity to experience them without being shattered by them. The Buddhist Dhammapada carries this understanding forward. Hatred never ceases by hatred in this world. By love alone does it cease. This is the eternal law. The text recognizes our human reflex to either strike back or go numb when under attack. It prescribes something far more difficult, remaining present with an open heart even when everything in us wants to fight or flee. Whether silent weapons for quiet wars represents an actual elite blueprint or sophisticated conspiracy fiction matters less than what it reveals about the mechanisms of control. The techniques it describes, economic pressure, information overload, and manufactured crisis, learned helplessness, are observable in modern society regardless of their origins. Awakening attempts to destroy that. It offers the capacity to witness life exactly as it unfolds without losing its center. The skill to experience pressure without fragmenting. That is why genuine spiritual development threatens systems of control. It creates individuals who cannot be subdued through the usual mechanisms of stress and trauma. Religious authority carries extraordinary power. In the right hands, it heals wounds that nothing else can touch. In the wrong hands, it creates wounds that may never heal. Certain teachers have discovered how to transform the path of liberation into a highway of obedience. They employ techniques that dull judgment while binding loyalty ever tighter. We don't need to speculate about these methods. The CIA's MK Ultra program tested them explicitly. From the 1950s through the 1970s, researchers funded by the agency experimented with LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and various coercive techniques. They sought to discover how consciousness could be fractured in predictable ways.
You brought with you some of those devices which would have enabled the CIA to use this poison for,
we have indeed,
for killing people.
Senate hearings in 1977 confirmed its targeting of unwitting subjects and its goal of exploiting dissociative states to create compliant assets. They discovered that dissociation can be engineered, and once achieved, obedience flows like water flowing downhill. Spiritual movements fall into these patterns all the time. Om Shinrikyo started in 1984 as a yoga group in a Tokyo apartment. Shoko Asahara taught meditation and promised students supernatural powers. The early members were really smart people, from scientists, engineers to doctors looking for enlightenment. By 1995, those same people were making sarin gas. On March 20th, 5 teams got on Tokyo subway trains during rush hour. They punctured bags of liquid sarin with sharpened umbrellas. 13 people died and thousands got hurt. When police raided their compounds, they found enough chemical weapons to kill millions. They even had anthrax and Ebola samples. The meditation group was preparing for war. How did yoga students become terrorists? Asahara cut them off from outside information. He made them drink his bath water for spiritual merit. They paid thousands of dollars to drink his blood. He put them through extreme practices, starving for weeks, sitting in total darkness, hanging upside down for hours. These practices scramble their brains. Exhausted people can't think straight. They become suggestible. When Asahara told them that murder was actually compassionate because it stopped people from accumulating bad karma, they believed him. The sadhaks who joined to find enlightenment had become weapons in someone else's war. The pattern for mind control is always similar. Charismatic leaders make their followers do practices that lead to isolation and exhaustion. They use bizarre rituals that break down normal thinking so that they can insert any idea, no matter how insane, and followers will accept it. Smart people aren't immune, and oftentimes they are easier targets because they're better at rationalizing the irrational. Nexium sold executive coaching to successful people. Behind that front, Keith Raniere ran increasingly abusive inner circles. He called himself Vanguard, and his followers called him the smartest man in the world. The abuse started small, where members took classes for self-help. Then came the exploration of meaning sessions, which basically were interrogations that lasted until you broke down crying. They'd find your deepest fears and use them against you. Women got told they were too proud. Men got told they were weak. Everyone learned to doubt themselves. What followed is too disturbing for YouTube. Basically, Ranieri used the same pattern. Luckily, he got 120 years in prison. However, thousands of similar groups operate right now using the same playbook. The Zen master Yunmen once faced a student who asked, "What is Buddha?" His response was deliberately jarring. "A dried shit stick." The student expected something profound. Instead, Yunmen pointed to the toilet cleaning stick. When students came to it.Similarly, describing elaborate visions during meditations, he'd interrupt them. "The rice is burning, go tend to it." His message was straightforward. Your enlightenment is worthless if you can't perform simple tasks properly. This insistence on the ordinary protects students from chasing special states. The mind seeking enlightenment is the same mind that seeks any achievement. Give it exotic experiences to pursue, secret knowledge to acquire, and the ego takes on a new costume. On one hand, Ranieri created elaborate hierarchies of secret knowledge where each level required more surrender of autonomy. The Zen masters did the opposite. Master Joshu taught, ordinary mind is the way. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Real practice makes you more capable of normal life, not less. When a practice leaves you unable to function without the teacher, when it requires increasingly extreme measures to maintain your state, that's not enlightenment. The path to freedom makes you more free at each step, not more bound to someone else's authority. The competency of a teacher should be measured in whether their presence restores agency, integrity, and natural compassion in those who follow. Society has a problem distinguishing between transcendence and pathology. Both the enlightened person and the psychopath display emotional detachment, disregard for social convention, and an apparent absence of fear. From the outside, a Zen master's equanimity might look identical to a sociopath's coldness. And this confusion isn't accidental. Systems that depend on emotional manipulation, governments, corporations, religious institutions, have good reason to conflate spiritual sovereignty with mental illness. A population that believes detachment equals dysfunction will never seek liberation from the very emotions being used to control them. The distinction lies in the source and purpose of the detachment. A psychopath's emotional absence comes from neurological deficit. They literally cannot feel what others feel. Their brain scans show reduced activity in regions associated with empathy and emotional processing. They manipulate others because they experience people as objects, tools for personal gain. Their fearlessness stems from an inability to properly process threat. When they violate social norms, it's for advantage, not truth. The enlightened person's detachment has an entirely different origin. They've transcended emotional reactivity through understanding. They still feel, perhaps more deeply than before, but they're no longer controlled by what they feel. Their brain shows increased integration, not deficit. They influence others through example rather than manipulation. Their fearlessness comes from recognizing fear as a construct of ego. When they transcend social norms, it's because they found something more fundamental than conventional morality. A psychopath uses people because they cannot genuinely connect with them. An awakened person serves others precisely because they recognize the illusion of separation. They see that helping others is helping themselves in the most literal sense. A psychopath's lack of fear leads them to take reckless risks that endanger others. An enlightened being's transcendence of fear allows them to take necessary stands for truth that the fearful would avoid. A psychopath breaks rules for personal gain. A sage transcends convention when those conventions cause unnecessary suffering. The mislabeling serves a purpose. Every transcendent individual represents a threat to systems built on emotional control. You can't manipulate someone through fear if they've seen through fear's illusion. You can't control them through desire if they found fulfillment beyond wanting. You can't bind them with guilt if they've transcended the ego that guilt requires. So the system does what systems do. It pathologizes what it cannot control. It tells you that emotional detachment is dangerous, that transcending ego is narcissistic, that finding peace beyond social validation is antisocial personality disorder. Enlightenment has an evil twin, as the meditation teacher named Shinzen Young puts it. The clinical term is depersonalization derealization disorder, or DPDR. Both enlightenment and DPDR strip away the illusion of solidity. Both show that the self you thought you were and the world you thought you stood on are constructions. Yet one brings freedom while the other delivers despair. Let's look at how awakening unfolds in classical Buddhist training. After years of disciplined practice to refine attention, concentration stabilizes. Compassion softens the mind. When the emptiness finally reveals itself, the experience is liberating and the walls of ego turn transparent. The world shows itself as flow instead of fixed structures, and death loses its sting. Reality appears luminous, and instead of terror, there is wonder. As Young describes it, the practitioner begins to live 10 times the size of their former life. DPDR seeps in by another path. It usually comes from trauma and drugs, and it has the capacity to suddenly push perception off its rails. A person wakes one morning and discovers that the self feels hollow, like a stage set. The world looks flat, drained of vitality, like a film behind glass. They cannot reconnect with what once felt real. Instead of liberation, they experience exile from their own existence. Many mistake it for spiritual awakening, but instead it's a waking nightmare that often comes with a sense of utter meaninglessness. The Pali Canon warns of falling into the pit of the void. To see emptiness without the preparation of virtue, concentration, and compassion is to tumble into nihilism. The recognition is real, but without wisdom it twists into despair. Why does the same insight split into such divergent outcomes? The answer is preparation. Awakening is cultivated. The ground is tilled with ethics, stability, service, equanimity. When emptiness arrives, it rests on a scaffold strong enough to hold it. DPDR offers no such foundation, and it strikes without context, without practice, without support. The emptiness is the same, but the vessel that receives it determines whether it becomes medicine or poison. Young describes working with students who brush against this edge. He reminds them that if they are panicking about emptiness, the panic is real enough. That gives them something to hold. He then teaches them to consciously generate positive experiences, warmth, joy, gratitude. Slowly, the psyche rebuilds strength. The void becomes less like a pit and more like a boundless sky. As Nisargadatta Maharaj famously once said, "When I see I am nothing, that is wisdom. When I see I am everything, that is love." My life is a movement between these two. Real awakening does something extraordinary. And no, it doesn't wipe out your personality or turn you into some blissed-out zombie. Your ego doesn't get destroyed. It just stops running the show. What you thought was solid and separate turns out to have been flowing and connected all along. When you see this clearly, you don't have to work to get compassion. It just starts happening. Regular compassion usually works from a sense of distance. I feel bad for you. I want to help you. I'll make sacrifices for you. This kind of caring matters enormously. However, when the fence between me and you becomes see-through, compassion flows without anyone directing traffic. It's just compassion moving through whatever's happening, taking care of whatever needs taking care of. The New Testament captures this perfectly. Love is patient, love is kind. It doesn't envy, doesn't boast, isn't proud. It doesn't dishonor others, isn't self-seeking. It's basically describing what love looks like when your ego stops trying to manage it. Similarly, the Gita says, "The wise see with equal vision a learned priest, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast." It's what you actually see when you recognize the same consciousness showing up everywhere. Maybe the Dhammapada puts it most beautifully. As a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. A mother doesn't have to think about protecting her child. Protection happens automatically because she recognizes the child as part of herself. awakening reveals nothing is actually separate from you. And in that recognition, caring for everything becomes as natural as breathing. Dissociation can't create this kind of compassion because dissociation shuts down the very channels through which connection flows. You can't love what you can't feel. You can't serve what you can't touch. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge. Awakening opens all the channels at once. Life pours through without getting stuck anywhere. Compassion moves effortlessly because reality itself, when you see it clearly, is already compassionate. The silent war will continue. This seems certain. Trauma will continue to accumulate. Secret societies, corrupt gurus, and systems of control will continue discovering new methods of inducing compliance. The technologies of manipulation will become more sophisticated, more subtle, more difficult to detect. The defense, however, remains as simple as it is ancient. Return to presence. Being here now in this body with these feelings, facing this reality, the fog of dissociation can only be lifted with genuine practice of embodying this wholeness. Compassion without an I arises with the recognition of what individuality actually is. A temporary constellation of consciousness, precious beyond measure, already whole, already free, already home. The war loses its weapons when there is nothing left to fragment, no separation to exploit, no absence to fill with external authority. We have a choice every moment. Will we choose presence or absence? The genuine difficulty of awakening or the false ease of dissociation? The answer we give individually and collectively will determine whether consciousness continues its evolution toward greater wholeness. The path back to presence remains open. It always has been. It always will be. The only question is whether we have the courage to walk it.